Breaking news, everybody. Magnus Carlsen, the current world champion of chess, has been on LeChess.org playing some bullet games this week, and he has treated us to not just one, but two separate Nakhmanson Gambits. So in this video, we're actually going to go over the entire history of Magnus and the Nakhmanson. I see every single game that he's played. It's a total of 4 games so far. The first 2 we've already made individual videos on this channel, but I'll leave all the links in the description below if you want to go back and see a more thorough one. Then we're going to be treated to 2 brand new games. Then I have a bonus clip. There's a lot going on. There's going to be timestamps, links, a link to my Chessable course if you want to really deep dive and learn a little bit more about this awesome opening. That's going to be available as well. But we don't have time. We got to get into this. We got 4 whole games to cover, and this is the story. This is the story of Magnus Carlsen playing or facing the Nakhmanson Gambit. And the first game that he ever played was 1 year ago, where Magnus had the black pieces against Brandon Jacobson. And the first game is actually an interesting one, because Magnus Carlsen, who had the black pieces facing the Nakhmanson for the very first time, actually goes wrong and falls for one of the opening traps. So let's check this out and see exactly how this happened. The Nakhmanson itself can come through a variety of different move orders. This one comes from an Italian game. You could also play the Scotch Gambit in order to get here. You could play the Bishop's Opening in order to get here. But however you get to this position after knight takes e4, if you can play the move knight to c3, you are playing the Nakhmanson Gambit. And this is it. The world champ, he's got the black pieces. He's facing it for the first time. What is he going to come up with? Is he going to bravely accept the gambit and allow some of the fun that occurs after bishop takes f7, queen d5 with lots of complications? Or is he going to come up with something else? Well, he decides in this game he's going to decline the gambit. He plays the move knight takes c3, which is a very reasonable way of declining the Nakhmanson. And after the capture, d5, main move, bishop b5, main move for white. Black here, Magnus Carlsen, already makes a rather large mistake. He gets a little bit greedy and decides to take this c-pawn. And from here, I'm actually going to give you guys an opportunity if you want to pause and figure this out for yourself. A lot of people may already know this trap, but this is a major opportunity for white to strike and get a very large initiative and potentially a very winning attack. And I'll give a few hints before I do spoil it. What is going on in this position is that all of a sudden the E file is opened up. The knight is already under pressure, and this is actually a very important knight that is defending the E7 square, which is very critical in a lot of these positions. And we have the opportunity to continue to put pressure on the knights. We can play moves like knight to E5, and potentially we can bring this bishop into the game. I won't tell you exactly how. I won't just spoil it in case you don't already know. But what white did in this game was he played rook to E1, Magnus played bishop to e7 and knight to e5, putting pressure on the c6 knight. So here you have to be very careful, and black might not be losing in this position, but he's certainly losing after the move that Magnus played, bishop to d7. And the reason you might not be losing, I don't want to go too deep into it. There's a very complicated line that begins after queen to d6, a very precise, accurate move that if you know about it, you can potentially live. But after chomping the knight, there's a very interesting tactical idea here for white, and this is one that in these kinds of positions, you're always keeping a focal eye on the e7 square. We have a little bit of a tactic here with bishop to a3. So securing the queen to this bishop, this forces the black queen to move away. We can give this check. These complications were explored in the previous video, but they do favor white. So while that was possible, it was not what was actually played in this game. Instead of queen to d6, Magnus's choice was bishop to d7. And I don't know, maybe at first you're not 100% sure, like, okay, why is this so bad? I mean, he just defended the knight. It looks like a very reasonable continuation. But again, the problems lie on the e7 square. So the way to win this is to chomp. You want to take the knight, you want to take the bishop. It is important to get this light squared bishop because this bishop is also a potential blocker of the e file. The knight is a protector of the e7 square. But if you chomp and remove everything, you have a winning move. And it's the same move that we saw in the previous variation, bishop to a3. And this is exactly what happened in the game. And now white is simply going to win a piece. There's no way to save the bishop. So Magnus just decided he had to castle. And from here, white went on to win this game. We'll go through it. Black did go for some complications, But at this point, the game was over. Looks like black came close to getting a little bit of counterplay, but it was played pretty well by white, even for a 1-minute game. And Magnus did resign in this position. So that was 1 year ago against Brandon Jacobson. But then, another video that we've already explored. This is the game Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces against Andrew Tang. So let's see how Magnus decides to handle this when he gets the white pieces. Is he able to get a win? Let's find out. So we got a Scotch Gambit move order. Okay, this is great. Nakhmanson Gambit. And the question now is, how is Andrew Tang going to handle this position? Is he going to accept the Gambit? And the answer is no. He also declines it, but this time he plays the move pawn to d5. And pawn to d5 is a very interesting move. The computer marks it as questionable because it does give away basically any advantage that black might have. But it is a fine, and in a way, it's a very professional way of declining the gambit. It's basically black's like, hey, whatever, let's just get all these center pawns out of the way. Let's just trade everything off, open up, just get some equal position where we have all these bishops, everything's going great. But here, white actually makes a large mistake in this game. You do want to capture on d5, but you have to do it with the right piece. And Magnus here, unfortunately, did not play the best move. So he's having some bad luck. He had bad luck with black. Now he's having bad luck with white. The main idea is you just need to know that you want to take this bishop. Then your knight's hanging, there's knight's hanging. A complicated game, but it does work itself out. Instead, Magnus did decide to take on d5 with the knight, which you might be able to, after a brief pause, figure out exactly why this is wrong. This is already immediately leading to a position where white will be losing a piece. And it occurs after the move bishop to e6. And you look around and you go, uh-oh, there is just no square for the pony. But this one, it was kind of a weird game. I mean, it's a 1-minute game, so a lot of mistakes were made in this game compared to the last one. But white here simply is losing. Did find a way to make it kind of complicated with this move knight to g5, but we're going to kind of blast through. He managed to get a very tricky position where he was able to sack and exchange, take this knight, play queen to e5. White is down a rook, but was fortunate enough to be able to pick up this guy. And then eventually what happened is white equalized. He kind of set up, Magnus was able to set up a little bit of a fortress. And then at some point deep into this endgame, Magnus was actually winning for a brief moment. But since it was a bullet game, it did end with some good old-fashioned dirty flaggery. So just about as soon as white was winning in a position like this, he got flagged very soon after. So a tragic way to begin his career as a Nakhmanson player, but that was the first time that he had white. So far, he's 0 for 2 with the Nakhmanson against the Nakhmanson. But now we have a brand new game that we have not talked about yet. And this was a game, Magnus Carlsen versus Daniel Naroditsky. So a fellow YouTuber, Daniel Naroditsky, who goes by Rebecca Harris on lichess.org. And so can Magnus do a little bit better? Again, we get the Scotch move order. And then this game was also very interesting as to what black decided to do in this position. Because Daniel also did not accept the Nakhmanson, and he decided to decline. But he didn't just play a normal way of declining it. When it does come to declining it, the popular moves are knight takes c3, knight to d6, and d5. Those are basically the three ways of declining the gambit. But Naroditsky comes up with this move, knight to f6. And this is actually a mistake, but it's not easy to see at all. And here white just has kind of an amazing tactic. And it's not really a tactic. It's more like an attacking motif where if you can calculate like a computer from here, you should be able to get a winning attack. But this is kind of either you know it or you don't. And in the game, Magnus actually played knight to d5, which was not correct. Feel free to pause, but this is, I think we're in you know it or you don't territory. The best move in this position is this crazy counterattacking move, leaving your knight hanging and just going directly for the f-pawn. And it leads to all sorts of fun. In every single line, white is going to be doing quite well, having all the fun. The main point is that if you take this knight, you're just going to get checkmated. Bishop takes f7, the king comes out, and now rook e1. And you'll notice the king doesn't have anywhere to go, so you're going to have to start blocking, giving away your knights. And this is actually a mate in 4 with best play. Something like rook to e4, takes. You can give away all these knights. King can run around for a little bit. Here you have a nice finish to the game. Queen f3, and the only mate in one in the position, queen to f4, is a beautiful finish. So you probably don't need to know all the way to mate. If they do play this, just knowing they have to give away all the knights should be enough. And what that means is that in this position, after knight f6, knight g5, as black, you do need to prevent the things that are happening on f7. You can't let white take on f7 with the bishop. So black will need to play the move pawn to d5. And here, there are quite a lot of ways for white to continue. I'm assuming rook to e1 is a nice way to go. But you do have a very beautiful move, knight takes d5. So imagine finding all of this in a bullet game if you've never seen it before. Knight g5, knight takes d5, all of this stuff. But the point is, after knight takes, there are quite a few ways of getting an attack. And they all have to do with positioning this queen, where she's going to be attacking this pawn. It has to do with rook to e1. And there's many different ways you can go about it. You can start with rook e1. You can start with queen f3. You can even play queen h5, provoking g6, and only then going to f3, where suddenly you're attacking all of the important squares. You're attacking d5, you're attacking f7. This is just fun. I don't know what black is meant to do if, for example, you play bishop to e6, which is the move that protects everything. Rook to e1 becomes a serious issue. For example, if bishop to e7, there's even smashing moves such as rook takes e7, where we're on this pawn. We're removing the defender of this guy. This all leads to a lot of fun for white. It's very complicated, so you probably do want to spend time if you think your opponents will play this. But knight f6 is a very unpopular move, but the main ideas are to go in for this massive attack. However, in the game, what we saw was knight to d5 from Magnus, so missing this ridiculous computer possibility. And a few more blunders, I believe, were played in this game. Bishop to e7, which is also curiously wrong for a very similar reason that, you'd expect a computer to find. Magnus played here, but again, the better move, the computer move, is knight to g5, and this stuff is just getting kind of silly. The idea is after knight takes d5, of course you play knight takes f7, where after the king takes, queen f3 is the way to go. The knight is pinned. You should be able to win some material from here. Also very complicated, but knight to g5 is a recurring theme that seems to win in like all of these positions. As it were, the way this game continued was bishop to e7, knight takes, and now bishop to g5. So it feels like even though you're down 2 pawns, you're almost assuredly going to win 1 pawn back. You're probably going to destroy black's pawn structure. So I'm sure white is not too unhappy in this position. Takes, but now another weird move was played in this position. Probably you should just move your bishop with white. But queen to d4 was played. Again, 1-minute game, maybe some phantom threats of, taking here, putting pressure on the rook, maybe something going on the e7 square. But as is the nature of bullet chess, it was just overlooked. This bishop can be captured. I assume both players were maybe worried about some sort of queen f6 sort of shenanigans, but this is fine. And I would assume most players would play knight to g6 here. The computer, even cold-heartedly, just castles, like whatever. It's not checkmate, and you hung a bishop. Computer doesn't care about anything. But in the game, both players were worried about some sort of threat. The queen comes out to d6, defends this pawn, and the game continues. And from here, not too much action happened. Well, okay, a few more blunders were made, like literally every single move. I don't want to go too deep. I don't want to criticize a 1-minute game for hours on end. Here's the way that it finished. It actually was relatively peaceful at the very end. We get to some endgame where black probably still has a little bit of nagging pressure, but not too much, and Magnus was able to eventually pick up this last pawn. Well, he was able to pick up a pawn, takes care of the a pawn. We get a position where white has a couple pawns for a bishop, trade, yada, and eventually a peaceful conclusion, a draw. So this game ends. Both players still had a lot of time. They were moving very quickly in this game, and the game ends in a draw. So the first time Magnus did not lose with the Nakhmanson Gambit. But then 19 hours ago, we had yet another exciting Nakhmanson game. And this one I did manage to capture live on Twitch. So I'll show a clip of this at the very end. But here is the game. This is, again, Magnus Carlsen versus Andrew Tang, the rematch. Can Magnus improve over his last time against Andrew? Let's see. We got the Nakhmanson on the board. And again, we see D5. This seems to be Andrew Tang's preferred way of declining it. So hopefully at home, you know exactly how to take on D5. If not, you may want to back up and check the previous analysis. You want to take with the bishop. But yet again, Magnus takes with a knight. And this is very surprising to me because it means either, and very possibly, he just didn't study. I mean, he just didn't look up how to deal with this, which is very possible. Or does he possibly believe that this is a decent and complicated enough variation? Does he think, well, yeah, it's bad, but maybe it's really complicated and I'm just going to play it anyway? Or is it a mistake? I don't know. Fight it out in the comments below. Let me know. Magnus, does he just blunder twice in a row? Or does he believe? Is this some good variation? Well, he does improve. Last time he played knight to g5. This time he plays rook to e1, which is at least a little more computer approved. And while white is losing, it did look, at least in real time, to be a very, very confusing affair. Because after some trades, knight to g5 was played, and this pin is created on the e-file. So even though we're down a knight and we're down a pawn, it does look like we might be able to get it back. Well, black plays this move, pawn to f5, which perhaps does deter white from playing a move like f3 in this position. f3 would be the way to get the piece back, but perhaps he's worried if he does go in for this. Black will get this huge center. Black is just going to be castling on the queen side. Maybe he'll be fine. So Magnus comes up with this crazy move. Queen to h5, g6, and now, not just moving the queen or something, he comes up with a nice intermediate move. Knight takes e4, and this is a very cool idea. There is this forking square, so black needs to be really careful. There is a pin, so you can't simply take back. So there's already a lot going on. There's pins everywhere. The complications are crazy, and you get 40 seconds to figure this out. So what is black going to do? Well, black decides to just castle, and the question is, do we have a way of saving our piece? And even if we do we have a way? Is this just good for black? And it does kind of turn out, unfortunately for Magnus, that even though he got a piece back, this position is just really good for black. Here he pins the f-pawn, makes it impossible to take this knight. And after bishop to b4, attacking the rook, more tactical moves. It's bishop to d2. So now one thing is attacking another thing. This thing is pinned. Things are starting to attack each other. Black just brings his rook in, rook to e8, and now knight f6. Probably there was nothing better. This is a complicated way of continuing, forking all of the pieces, but black can take this with check, and these things are hanging. What to do? Black decides to capture on e1, rook takes e1, and he brings the bishop back. Now after this trade, takes back, knight takes a7, and Magnus has gotten all of the material back. So he has spent some time. He's gotten everything back. It's nice that, for example, if there is some sort of rook to h8, which looks to be the way to pin this knight and win it, there's this resource, knight to g5, getting out of this while attacking the queen. This would be a much improved version for white. But the problem is, after it's all said and done, after every single tactic has been played in the position, knight takes c2 comes, and now all of a sudden we can understand this d pawn to be just a monster roaring down the board. So from here, I mean, Magnus is kind of powerless, has to sacrifice the knight, and black played really well from this position, never really gave Magnus a chance, found a lot of good moves, kept the pressure on for the rest of the game, and he was able to convert this with a nice mate in one. And as I said, I do have an actual clip of this, so what you're about to see is me playing this live on twitch.tv. You can come and follow me there. But I had just started the stream. I was just getting excited, and next thing I knew, boom, Nakhmanson was on the board. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you guys subscribe to the channel, check out this clip, and I'll see you guys for the next video. So they're battling. There are no 3200s until right now. And here we go. Hey, here we go. Let's get some Scotch Gambits. Let's get some fun. Whoa, 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 whoa. Is this it? I turned my head, but this is a Nakhmanson, yeah? I turned my head for a second. And we get a Nakhmanson? And wait, is this the same? Has Magnus Carlsen made this mistake before? To my knowledge, Magnus Carlsen is 0-2 with the Magnusson and against it. So this could be some sort of redemption. Magnus is yet to win a game with the Nakhmanson, but here, through a series of pins, he has been able to get a reasonable position. Or what? All right, so this is getting wild. Can Magnusson finally win a game on either side of the Nakhmanson? It would be great to see, especially with white. And I know Andrew Tang has probably been on both sides of Nakhmansons as well. I did make a video when Andrew Tang won a game as black. So I know Magnus, hopefully, if he wins with the Nakhmanson, hopefully that'll encourage him to play it a few more times. Let's go. Obviously, black has more pieces here. So that is bad news for the Nakhmanson. But Magnus just has no luck. No luck with the Nakhmanson on either side.